And now we come to item 4.5 on the agenda, which is planning application number 2025/1378, and it's in Great and Little Plumstead. And I invite Senior Planning Officer Matthew Blackie to present this application.
Thank you, Eleanor. Okay, so this is a planning application. So it's a Section 73 application for the removal of Condition 10, and Condition 10 is related to Passive House Plus standard for the consented planning permission 2019-1053. So just to note that this particular application is looking at the removal of a planning condition for an already granted planning permission, and the condition that we will be focused upon is Condition 10, and the wording for the condition is: prior to the first occupation of a dwelling, a certificate verifying that that dwelling on that plot complies with the Passive House Plus standard or equivalent standard shall be submitted to and approved in writing with the local planning authority. So we are just focused upon the removal of that particular condition. And just to note, the reason for the application being presented to Planning Committee is due to the planning site history. So you may be aware of this site. So in March this year, there was another planning application that came forward. So this is the application site here, and it's situated within the site for the Otkin Barns. As you can see, this is Little Plumstead here, and we've also got Great Plumstead here. Just a more focused site location. So this is the site here in red, and we've then got the Otkin Barns, and as you can see that they are listed buildings. So as previously mentioned, there was an application earlier this year. However, this is actually focused upon the already approved application itself. So as you can see, there is an extant permission for 7 dwellings. And this is the latest approved site block plan, which was permitted under the 2019 Section 73 application. So just for reference, plot 3 is one that has been built out. Plot 6 here is one that has been sold separately to a new owner, but construction has yet to commence for that site. So just to run through what is Passive House. So essentially, Passive House Plus certificate is defined as an official document issued by the Passive House Institute that verifies that a building meets the Passive House Plus standard, which is a high performance energy standard combining extreme energy efficiency and renewable energy generation. So essentially, these buildings are required to be built to Passive House Plus standard as part of the approved application. And in order to demonstrate that they've been built to Passive House Plus standard, they would be required to submit a certificate to confirm that. So plot 3 was built to Passive House Plus standard, and a certificate was submitted to the local planning authority, which has been approved to confirm that it was compliant with the requirements of Passive House Plus. So now this application is looking to remove that requirement for all of the remaining plots, so plots 1, 2, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So the reasons why they're looking to remove the condition itself is due to there has been concerns with the requirements and the impact it's had on the deliverability of the site. So the Passive House Plus standard adds an additional 22% building cost per building or per plot, and it's been considered that due to the cost, it's impacted upon the marketability of the site, and also it's raised concerns about the viability and deliverability of the site. We did have a viability appraisal submitted in support with the application, and the figures relating to the build costs for Passive House Plus were verified by our independent appraisal consultant. So I'm just going to show you the approved elevations for plots 1 to 6 and then plot 7. And the reason being is because although they are looking to remove the Passive House Plus standard, the way that the dwellings have been designed and the built form that they've been designed to is considered to still meet really good sustainability and energy efficiency. So it's important to note that whilst we are recommending approval for the removal of the condition, we still do consider that any buildings that would be built on site would still have really good energy and sustainability credentials, and this is due to the shape, the form and external envelope. So these buildings were designed in the Passive House, were designed to Passive House Plus standard, and although we're looking to remove the certificate, they have still been designed in terms of the principles of Passive House, and so it's still considered that the shape of the building will help with sustainability and energy efficiency and also air tightness. So because of these reasons, we do consider that the buildings themselves are still very good energy and sustainable, have very good sustainability and energy credentials. And then just to note that these are the approved elevations for plot 7. So this is plot 3. This is the plot that has been built out and has been built to Passive House Plus standards. This is the view as you're arriving into Octagon Barns, and this is the access here. And then this is just a view looking down south from the site. So the construction for plot 6 has yet to commence. So this is how it looks. Okay, so just to summarise, so the original application that was approved, it was approved at the time when Broadland District Council were not able to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. So Broadland District Council engaged the tilted balance under the requirements of paragraph 11D of the NPPF. At the time, it was acknowledged that the site was outside of the defined settlement boundary for Little Plumstead. However, it was also acknowledged that there was going to be harm to the setting of the listed buildings. However, it was considered that there were overriding benefits, and these benefits included contributions to the housing land supply, the sustainability credentials, including the Passive House Plus standard as well, and also the provision for self-build dwellings within the district. So the removal of the condition will lead to the loss of one of the original benefits. However, as officers, we do consider that there has been issues with the Passive House Plus standard. So the issues that have arisen from that is the build costs, which has then impacted upon the deliverability of the site. And so we do consider that due to these issues that have arisen from the Passive House Plus standard, we do consider that although we acknowledge it will be the loss of a benefit, we do still consider that that loss is acceptable in the planning balance when you also factor in the contribution towards the housing land supply, the deliverability of the site, and also the provision of self-build coming forward within the district itself. So as part of the planning balance, we are recommending approval for the application and for the removal of condition 10 from the granted scheme. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that clear presentation. Do we have any questions for the officer? Councillor Cobb.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm really pleased that this project's coming forward in its original form, and those lovely white villas are going to be built, because I think it's absolutely beautiful, the one I've seen myself in the parkland. There is quite a lot of glass in this whole scheme. All the villas have quite large areas of glass. It is in the setting of very historic parkland and historic buildings, and I know the Passive House Plus made lots of sort of stipulations, but one that I would like observed is I would like the glass to be specified visual light transmission 65 or below, just to protect that sort of darker sky of the parkland. Is that something that planning could condition? Please, thank you.
I'll just pick that up if that's all right. What we're doing today, Councillor Copperstone, is just considering what's in front of us in terms of the removal of this condition. So we're in effect reimposing the same conditions that were there before, so we would revert back to those conditions that we have. So at this present time, we will not be looking to do that.
Councillor Clancy.
Yeah, thank you. I think based around what we see in front of us, I think it preserves the initial appearance of the original site. The layout is still very, very nice. As Councillor Copperstone's already alluded to, the parkland setting with the style of dwelling. And I think so long as a level which you've assured us they are, a level of eco-credentials will be retained, which they're going to be, which makes good sense to those who are building it as well. The Passive House Standard Plus, again, this is not relevant to this application, but I know somebody who has tried to achieve that, and the 22% uplift in cost, I would say, is potentially, with current building costs, is actually higher than that, considerably higher than that. So the deliverability, again, I totally concur with what the officer said and the applicant said. You must make these properties deliverable. There is the extent application in a sense that, you know, they need to build out. There's a principle of development been established. So I think with the level of protections which you've alluded to with the eco-credentials, I think it's a great compromise, a sensible compromise, which allows some quality properties to build in a good location to a high standard. Eminently sensible.
And you're proposing?
I will propose it if the chairman would be so kind.
When we get to the vote, but I just have a quick question for the officer. Plot 3 has been built and is passive house. Plot 6 has been sold but not yet constructed. But I just wondered, will that be built to passive house or not?
So this would, if you approve this application, that would remove the requirement for plot 6 to be built to passive house standard as well. So sort of the remaining plots, with the exception of plot 3, which is already constructed, it would remove that requirement. So obviously that would then be down to the owners of that plot whether they wish to or not. But as Matthew has sort of already said, a lot of the principles around the passive house design, obviously we're not looking at amending the designs at all through this application. So the designs, the elevations, and also those passive house principles will still be retained through the scheme.
So I just have a further question. So there is no need, in your opinion, to add a condition to say we require very high energy efficiency. So we're taking away the passive house, but do you think that's required or not?
I don't think that we would need a condition for that, and the reason being is because the way that these, as presented, the way that these buildings have been constructed, have been designed, is still within the principles of passive house. And I think it's also important to note is that when they go through building control and building regulation, there's legislation that requires certain energy efficiencies in terms of minimum, and it's likely that given how these dwellings have been designed, it could likely exceed that. So therefore, we don't consider an initial condition as relevant.
Councillor Berry.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. A little bit of clarity, please. If we're removing this condition, are these going to be air source or ground source fuel, shall we say? And also, just a little secondary one. Will these properties, or could these properties have what I call a living roof? Thank you.
I'll jump in if you want. I think, to answer the second question first, they could have a living roof, but that will be up to the applicants as to whether the owners as to whether they will want to do that or not. And without getting the details, that will depend about whether they're able to accommodate that in terms of load bearing and all those sorts of things. We aren't looking to control that. I don't think it's for us to control. In terms of the energy requirements, unless I'm wrong, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, I think they'll be connected to the grid.
Councillor Leggett, yeah.
So the planning application is dealt with under the original 29 application that we're looking at now. That gave planning permission for plot 6. What's happened is these are all going to be self-build units. So plot 6 has already been sold to an individual, but the designs are as were approved in under that 2019 application. So they don't need a further application now to start building because that's still a live planning permission.
Okay, so we have no public speakers registered to address the meeting, so we can now discuss and determine the application. Has anyone got any comments? Councillor.
I'm really happy with this application. It's great that we've got all these self-builds coming forward. They're exceptional design, and I'm pleased that they're going to have quite good energy efficiency. I would like the VLT glass to be under 65 just to protect the dark skies of the parkland, but I'm happy to propose that we go ahead and approve this in its current condition. Thank you.
So we have proposed and a seconder to approve this application. Any further comments before we go to the vote? Councillor Berry.
I'd just like to say I would have liked to have seen them with air source or ground source heating. Thank you.
I think it's highly likely that these buildings will have that. And I think it will be very pleasing to see this site finally built out. So we can now go to the vote. So all those in favour of approving this application, please raise your hands.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So that application is approved. Thank you. And so now we move to our final application, which is item 4.6, planning application number 2025/1416, which is in Posick. And we have Senior Planning Officer Matthew Blackie doing our presentation. Thank you.
All right, thanks again, Eleanor. Okay, so this is a planning application for the annex building at the Horizon Centre. The reason for this application coming to planning committee is due to it being a council-owned building. This is a Section 73 application. However, this is now for a variation of condition for a condition 2, and the application seeks the relocation of the lift consented under permission 2024/3394. So just some site context. So this is the annex building here, and as we all know, we're currently in the Horizon Business Centre here. And just some wider site context as well, just to show the Horizon Centre in the Broadland Gate Business Park. So the approved permission has granted use of the annex building as a veterinary practice, and these are the associated parking spaces. So under the original granted permission, where my cursor is, so here, this is where the approved permission for the platform lift was. They are now seeking to relocate the platform lift, so it's going to be situated here. And just a thing to note as well, at the moment, this where the lift is proposed to be relocated, that provides access to the gas meter for the annex building, and they're just going to be looking to relocate the access gates to here, to where my cursor is. So these are the approved elevations, and as you can see, this is where the platform lift is. As approved, and then these are the proposed elevations. So as you can see, this is where the platform lift is proposed, and as you can see, this is where the steel mesh gate for the access to the gas meter will be proposed. Just some site photos. So it is currently under construction, so it is now an extant permission. That's access to the building, and then this is looking at it into the car park. So as officers, we are recommending approval for the application, subject to reimposing all of the original conditions. Environmental quality did raise a holding objection to the application, which has been set out in the officer report due to insufficient information regarding the condenser units at the moment, we do have a discharge condition application that is running simultaneously to this application. And that application is dealing with the details for the condenser units, the cycle provision, and also the external lighting. So therefore, we do acknowledge the comments from environmental quality, but we don't consider them to be relevant regarding this application. And so we are recommending approval and seeking delegation of the application. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Oh, sorry. Do we have any questions for the planning officer? No? No, we have no public speakers registered to speak. So we can now go to discussion and determination. So, Councillor Copleston.
I think this was discussed in detail when it came forward, and this is just a small amendment, so I would be happy to approve the application.
Yes, we have a seconder with Councillor Mear. Any further comments before we go to the vote on this? Seems fairly straightforward application. So we have a proposal to approve. All those in favour of approving, please raise your hands.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. So this application is approved. Thank you very much indeed. We will all just remain to look at the next section, item 5 on the agenda, which is planning appeals for information, once the live stream is finished.